We're putting together all the chilling images. Stand by for that. And the CDC is now urging many vaccinated Americans to go back to wearing masks.
Here. Just unlock it and...
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's the other key. Oh shit, did I give you the wrong? Oh shit, let me see. That's the right key.
No doubt about that, Wolf. This explosive shot.
Oh, there we go. Oh, there. You're welcome. Manager problems. Now the goddamn one with a key. Anyways.
Line officers dragged into the mob and beaten and then crushed between doors. One had his gun taken from him, while another was sprayed with chemicals. That video was coupled with the raw memories of the officers who experienced it.
I could feel myself losing oxygen and recall thinking to myself, this is how I'm going to die, defending this entrance.
One latched onto my face, got his thumb in my right eye, attempting to gouge it out. I cried out in pain, managed to shake him off.
All four of the officers who testified and many of their other colleagues are still suffering from the physical and mental scars from that day, in addition to the brute violence.
I heard chanting from some in the crowd, get his gun, and kill him with his own gun.
The mob was also racist, screaming at this officer.
20 people joined in screaming, boo, fucking nigger. No one had ever called me a nigger while wearing the uniform of a Capitol Police officer.
And these officers made it clear the terrorists were there with a specific purpose.
No, man, this is our house. President Trump invited us here. We're here to stop the steal.
Especially with the razor-thin margins on Democrats and Republicans in the House and Senate. If any single one person was kidnapped or killed, which I have no doubt in my mind is what they intended, that would affect the outcome of legislation and all your duties for years to come.
The root causes of that day are an important part of the mission of the committee, and the role of the former president to fire up his supporters is part of their investigation. Representative Liz Cheney, one of only 2 Republicans on the panel, vowed to follow the investigation wherever it leads them.
We must also know what happened every minute of that day in the White House. Every phone call, every conversation, every meeting leading up to, during, and after the attack.
And Representative Adam Kinzinger was clearly moved by the officer's testimony.
I never expected the day to be quite as emotional for me as it has been.
Republican leader Kevin McCarthy saying he didn't watch the hearing, instead holding a press conference beforehand blaming Speaker Pelosi.
January 6th, these brave officers were put into a vulnerable, impossible position because of the leadership at the top has failed.
And Alabama Republican Mo Brooks, who spoke at the rally on January 6th before the Capitol riot.
You don't have anything to say about the Capitol police officers that testified?
I don't know what happened.
In the hearing, officers expressed outrage over Republicans unwilling to accept the reality of what occurred on that day.
I feel like I went to hell and back to protect them and the people in this room. But too many are now telling me that hell doesn't exist, or that hell actually wasn't that bad. The indifference shown to my colleagues is disgraceful.
And then President Trump's conduct afterwards, defending the riots and calling them, quote, very loving, cuts these frontline officers deeply.
Is a pathetic excuse for his behavior for something that he himself helped to create, this monstrosity. I'm still recovering from those hugs and kisses that day that he claimed that so many rioters, terrorists, would assaulting those that day.
And many want the former president to be held responsible for the role he played.
If a hitman is hired and he kills somebody, the hitman goes to jail. But not only does the hitman go to jail, but the person who hired them does. There was an attack carried out on January 6th, and a hitman sent them. I want you to get to the bottom of that.
And it could be some time before we see another public hearing from this select committee, but their work will continue throughout the month of August. Representative Liz Cheney saying that subpoenas for information and for future witness testimony could come very soon. Wolf?
All right, Ryan, thank you very much. Ryan Nobles up on Capitol Hill. Let's break all this down with CNN special correspondent Jamie Gangel, CNN senior legal analyst, former federal prosecutor Maura Coates, and CNN senior law enforcement analyst, the former D.C. police chief Charles Ramsey. Chief Ramsey, you actually know some of these brave officers who testified today. They testified under oath. What went through your mind hearing the torture that they had to go through back on January 6th?
Well, first of all, Wolf, it was very powerful testimony, and in some ways, listening to them tell their story, in my mind, was even more powerful than watching the video, because when you put the two together, you get it's in context in a different way. And I think it was very smart on the committee's part to have these officers start, because there's been so much said about, the crowd wasn't violent, hugs and kisses, it was a normal tour, and absolutely nothing could be further from the truth. I do know a couple of those officers, in particular Fanone. I actually swore him in when I was chief of MPD. A very, very good police officer. All of them are very good police officers, but the heroism displayed that day was just unbelievable, to actually be in hand-to-hand combat for not just 5 minutes, but in some cases a couple of hours. Get injured, get back up, and get back on the line. I mean, I also felt proud of them and what they accomplished.
Laura, these police officers, they didn't hold back at all four of them. Very chilling, powerful remarks. We heard them calling the rioters terrorists, repeatedly, terrorists. That cuts straight through the attempt to rewrite history, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. You've also heard Officer, Hodges actually read a definition of what it means to be a domestic terrorist, talking about he brought his own receipts, he had done research, but his research was also firsthand experience of what he saw. We all know that this was not something that was somehow a casual occurrence or coincidence. It was intended to stop Congress from certifying the Electoral College after a fair and free election. And don't take my word for it. Take the words of even the former Attorney General, William Barr, who saw no evidence of any widespread voter fraud or abuse or anything that's been ever articulated in the courts of law across this country, even by those who are proposing that big lie. And so I echo what the commissioner says. And what I thought was so striking across all of it was their undying adherence to their oaths, and that they were juxtaposing their willingness to get back up, to fight another minute, let alone another day, to continue to serve, even those who were taking their service for granted, who anticipate that they will come back day after day. And the idea of them being willing to fill their obligations and oath, and the way that they're recrafting and recasting of this narrative as if those members of Congress who say they would like the truth are abiding by their oath. That was quite a poignant display and dynamic for me.
It certainly was. Jamie, it's interesting. The Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney, one of the two Republicans on this panel, she took fellow Republicans to task for downplaying what actually happened on January 6th. And it was noted today that both the Republican leader in the House, Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, they didn't have time to even watch this.
Too busy to watch, really. On January 6th, they were running for their lives and hiding. And for a few days afterwards, they were speaking honestly about it before they went back to Trump. What we are seeing with Republicans, other than Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, is this is still the party of Donald Trump. That said, this was a bad day for Kevin McCarthy. This was a bad day for Mitch McConnell. And it was a very bad day for Donald Trump. None of them wanted this hearing to happen or these hearings to happen. They did everything they could to block it. It's going forward, and starting with today, the testimony was devastating.
It certainly was so powerful. The new video that was released was also very, very powerful. Chief Ramsey, it was so difficult to hear Officer Harry Dunn describe the racist attacks of that day, but sadly, you say you're not surprised. How much do you think that racism actually fuels these rioters?
I think to an extent it does. I mean, it was just so much anger, but when you looked at members of the crowd, some of the groups that were represented there, I mean, obviously some of them are hate groups, so it would stand to reason that any person of color, police officer, would be subject to, racial slurs and so forth. So I wasn't surprised. It's all disappointing. I mean, we're all Americans. We're at the nation's capital, and yet you have this sort of thing go on. But it's just very unfortunate. But, again, Officer Dunn, as well as the others, they fought side by side. Black, white, Hispanic, men, women. They took their oath seriously. I just wish members of Congress would take their oath seriously, because many of them don't. And that's the sad part of all this. It's just pathetic.
Well said indeed, Chief Ramsey. Thank you very much, Laura. Jamie, guys, thanks to you as well. Just ahead, I'll speak live with the January 6th Committee Chairman, Congressman Benny Thompson. There he is. We have lots to discuss. I'll talk about the impact of today's hearing and what happens next. Stay with us. You're in the situation.
Angie's List is now Angie, your home for everything home. Angie still has the same top pros and reviews you've counted on for more than 20 years. Only now you'll get access to all the tools you need to make your home your happy place. Inside, outside, big or small, Angie helps you find the right solution for whatever you need done, all from your phone. It's simple to find upfront pricing and instantly book hundreds of projects. You can even search pricing guides to see what others paid for similar jobs, and easily compare quotes from top local pros to make sure you're getting a fair price. From lawn care to repairing the AC to the project of your dreams, Angie has your home projects handled from start to finish. Plus, when you book and pay through Angie, they'll cover your project up to the full purchase price, plus limited damage protection with their happiness guarantee. Make your home an Angie home. Check out Angie.com today. And for more on the happiness guarantee, go to Angie.com/happiness-guarantee.html.
The horrors of January 6th relived up on Capitol Hill today by officers who survived the insurrection. Here's another sample of what we heard during the very painful, awful description of what happened.
I could feel myself losing oxygen and recall thinking to myself, this is how I'm going to die.
The indifference shown to my colleagues is disgraceful. You talk about the impact of that day. But you guys won. You guys held. Democracies are not defined by our bad days. We're defined by how we come back from bad days.
And we're so driven by bigotry and hate that we attack our fellow citizens as traitors. If they're born in another country or they don't look like us. God help us. But I have faith. Because of folks like you.
Joining us now, the chairman of the January 6th Select Committee, Representative Benny Thompson. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for joining us. Very important, painful a day today as we saw the video, we heard the testimony. You could see the emotion on display, as you well saw, chairing this hearing from both the police officers, the members of your own committee, the sadness, the anger, the frustration. If you can briefly, take us a little bit inside that room.
Well, let me tell you, thank you for having me, by the way. It was a tough hearing. And I've been in hundreds of hearings since I've been here in Congress, but nothing has come close to what I experienced today. But when I sat there listening, looking at my colleagues to my left and right, I could see and emotions on their faces. I could see the hurt. I could see in their just demeanor that some of what they heard.
You don't need your fucking high beams. You see just fine, just like this.
It also needed to happen.
God,
one of the things
fucking inconsiderate people.
With today's hearing is established by these
little things that make me fucking really hate people. Really,
to give evidence.
The truth is
that something did happen. Something did happen. They're home. And so our job here in this testimony is a fiction. There's no question that the riot occurred on January 6th. Men and women got hurt. Members of Congress, staff, lives, almost lost, and the certification of the election could have seriously been compromised if that was stolen. So that was a lot that these men, others like them, did on January 6th, that we will, as a country, forever be indebted to them. And for that, they are our true.
Fuck you!
They are.
God damn it! That white Civic, I used to see it every day. Every day. And I think I've only gotten him to turn up to I'm talking about for years I've seen him every day. And I think I've only gotten him to turn off his high beams 3 times, maybe 4. The Altima.
Can you believe that those two people say they back that they support on would be too busy to at least acknowledge the service that these men and others like them did on January 6th, that basically saved their life. They ran like a lot of members of Congress ran on January 6th for their very lives. But those two men had security detail that whisked them away. But there are a lot of people who didn't have security details who had to stay and endure all the things that occurred. So I am disappointed as a member of this body that someone in leadership would not take the time to acknowledge the good work and the good deeds done by law enforcement on January 6th. So, but our committee will go on. We have a stellar group of members who are committed to doing it. And again, they felt really that the selection of law enforcement to be the first individuals to talk, it makes a tremendous statement about what we care about the job they did, but also acknowledging them as true patriots and true heroes for not allowing the Capitol to get compromised. They held on long enough until reinforcements finally came. And it was only because the reinforcements finally came were we able to save this democracy of ours. So our job now is, after hearing this testimony, is look into every nook and cranny and make sure that we find any and all evidence as to who participated in organizing, financing, encouraging the acts of January 6th, and ultimately present that along with recommendations as to what we need to do to make sure that on anyone's watch in the United States of America, this never happens again.
It should never, ever, ever happen again. I want to play this very powerful moment, Mr. Chairman, when the officer Harry Dunn described the ugly racist attacks he faced on January 6th. It's difficult to hear this language, but it's important to document what these courageous, heroic police officers went through. Listen to this.
One woman in a pink MAGA shirt yelled, You hear that, guys? This nigger voted for Joe Biden. In the crowd, perhaps around 20 people, joined in screaming, "Boo, fucking nigger." No one had ever called me a nigger while wearing the uniform of a Capitol Police officer.
What does it say to you, Mr. Chairman, that there was so much vile, racist hatred among this mob?
A lot of people who came to Washington came with that attitude on January 6th. A lot of people were encouraged to come to Washington on January 6th by people who also had that same attitude. So our job, as difficult as it might be, is to figure out who those individuals are.
So, driving aggressively, like I was last week, I think I got 108 miles to the first quarter of my tank. I'm now at 102.7, and I am only an eighth through my tank. Again, the off chances someone ends up watching these. The fuel reader on the views are very inaccurate. And my first quarter of a tank, I think the best I've ever seen is 120 miles out of the first quarter. And then from that first quarter, getting 120 to that tank, I'm going to catch this yellow, aren't I? There we are. Oh, we're going to be cutting this close. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Anyway, it's about 120 to the first quarter. The second quarter, which then puts me at half. So from 120 to 1 quarter, the next quarter, I get about 80. So I'll be about 200 miles at the halfway mark. So 200 miles, half tank. So in your mind, you assume I can get 400 miles to my tank. But it always happens. The next half tank, I only get about 140 miles to. That's it. And that's, or 150 on a good tank, 155, almost 160 to the last half, if I somehow get crazy good mileage. It just depends. Really, it depends on the flow of traffic. When this construction is done, I think my mileage is going to get better. I do. People in the left lane merge last minute. It's really obnoxious. Normally, or not normally, last week I'd be hot on this Scion's ass, this Scion that's right there, to block that Accord. But whatever. I don't care. I'll get home when I get home. That's how I see it. Malibu, on the other hand, hasn't used his blinker. I don't accept that. You have to. If he put his blinker on, I'd slow down and let him in. rush to get the space ahead of me, and we're all going to end up at the same place. Rushing. So driving like a total asshole. I got 23 miles to the gallon. I can get 4 miles to the gallon better driving normal like this, and I only gain a minute, like a minute and a half per trip at most. So speeding, I mean, yeah, speeding doesn't save you a lot of time unless you're on an extremely long road trip. Is they don't use the acceleration ramp to accelerate up to freeway speeds. We're still barely at 50, about to merge 60 miles an hour, and we're merging. Even me trying to save gas, I don't merge like that. Alright, so fuel mileage update, 108 miles driven. And we're probably gonna get about 110 to the quarter, which will probably set me up for about 200 for the half. I think I'm not flexible. No. Yeah, I think 190 maybe to the quarter, 180, 190, 200, somewhere in that range. We'll find out. I know for sure, unless for some reason I need to drive the View somewhere other than working back, because I'm trying to only use the View for working back. Although I think I am gonna have to drive it to the car wash because it rained, and I don't know what it is, but like the day after it rains, everyone's car doesn't look bad, but this looks like I haven't washed it in weeks, and I washed it last Friday. It's only Wednesday. I wash it once a week. Sucks. I don't know what it is about where I park or what. This thing gets dirty fast. It also has to do with the PCH for sure. Because wow, this guy's a bit slower than going for him. The PCH, the salt water, the ocean water gets on my car and it makes the car sticky. So I think it has something to do with that as well.